back. It is Bones. And in this one, let's go ahead and do a topic video. Now, I do these every once in a while when I have something I want to talk about. And after this past week, where we did see a lot of new reveals and releases from McFarlane, and per usual, we did have some great stuff, some strange stuff, and actually some baffling stuff. So that's usually how it goes with McFarlane. And that is kind of what I want to talk about today. And that is people's reactions to reveals and releases from McFarlane and the way it correlates with how you keep a figure line going and lasting years instead of dying in less than a year and not actually getting the full opportunity to make a really good line of DC figures. Now, we are going to get into it, so you're going to have to bear with me and ride with me till the end. But I do have a point that I'm going to try and get to in this video. And although I know a lot of it is going to be things that people just don't like to hear, but hopefully in the end, I can open up some eyes and get a little bit better understanding of how just exactly an action figure line works. Now, first up, I want to bring up the reveals of the Page Punchers Superman wave, where we had that crazy looking Superman with armor. And yes, we have found out that the armor is removable. We had a version of Val-Zod, which is not necessarily your comic version, but it is a version, opening up the room to make some customs, which you might want to wait on to see if McFarlane actually makes a comic accurate Val-Zod in the near future. We had the Ghost of Zod, which was actually pretty creepy and disturbing looking. And then, of course, you have Brainiac, a pretty divisive figure because a lot of people hated it. But then you have other people I have heard that are going to army build the crap out of this one. Even me, I have it planned to buy at least 5 of these sort of insectoid looking Brainiacs. But then you do have the other side of the coin where some people just don't understand it and don't like it. So you see it in the comments. You actually have people that make videos about this where they actually say things like, who asked for these? We don't want these. These suck. Or you have people that say, oh, that's an easy pass. And you know what I like to say? I like to say, why don't you speak for yourself, moron? Because who are you to be saying what we want or what the community wants? Because obviously there's a definite divide in where some people like the new things, the modern things, and then you have another side that actually just wants pure classic, no effort, no sculpting, nothing, and they only want classic versions of characters. But in the end, the beauty of it for me is that I actually want all the versions. I want the crazy, kooky stuff, and I want the normal old classic. And I can actually appreciate both versions and build a larger collection. And I actually support the line more because I want all the versions. And I purchase all the versions, even multiples. While you do have people that only buy classics, and in all actuality, I'm happy for them. That's good for them. That works for them, and that's fine. You have people that like a lot of the death metal stuff, which is rare, but there are collectors that like the newer designs, things that we've never seen before. So there also is that side of the collector. But how are you ever going to discover anything new or any new designs if you just shut your mind and want pure classic, old school versions that we have seen time and time again? Actually, a little bit boring, even though if you want to build your classic DC shelf, that's fine to just collect those versions, and eventually you will have a pretty cool looking classic shelf. But I also want a creepy shelf, alternate universe shelf where I could have characters that we've never had before. This kind of brings up, let me bring this guy out. this kind of brings up Captain Carrot. Now, it's kind of funny because for me, a lot of people say this figure is really awesome and McFarlane knocked it out of the park. The design, the sculpt work, really cool. Now, this is the platinum version, but I also do have the standard version. But here's the thing, I saw a video where a guy was talking about, McFarlane stuff, what he's picking up. And somebody commented, I guess it was like a live, and they were like, "Are you going to pick up that Captain Carrot?" This guy literally said, "Captain Carrot is the stupidest waste of plastic I have ever seen. Who wants that? That's the crappiest DC figure I have I have ever laid eyes on." And I was actually like, thrown back because I thought everybody loved this figure. I thought this figure was in a lot of people's top 10. And this guy actually was the other side where he said that this was, dumb, that who thought of this, that he'll never buy it. And I just bring that up because that goes to show you that we do not all collect the same. We have different tastes, we have different preference. And for somebody to comment like, "We don't want this," or "We're tired of this," who are you talking about? Who's we? Because I don't think like you. Just the same as if I were ever to say something, I would say, "I like this," or "I'm not a big fan of that." Why? Because I'm collecting for myself. I'm not trying to collect and make decisions for all the other DC collectors. I'm just collecting what I like and what I want to have in my collection, which is what everybody should do. That is why I go back to when somebody says they want to collect just the classic stuff, that's good for them. I'm happy for them. Now, a lot of times they do act like we're never going to get classic versions, which is not true. We'll talk about that coming up here in a little bit. But you must have patience. That's what I've always told people. Be patient. Let the line play itself out. Nothing we say or nothing we comment will have a big, vast, change on the line. They do hear us, they do make changes. But in the end, the people running this line are going to decide what they want and what is going to be released. So it is kind of wasted energy. And when we are talking about an action figure line, I always think of it as a marathon. You want it to go a lot of years, a lot of figures. You don't want it to be a sprint and just start and end like that. And, within 1 year, it's gone. No, you don't want to do that. Now, you know who had a long run of action figures, a beautifully executed line, and that is DC Universe Classics from Mattel. Now, I actually own all of these mint in box, and I also own them all loose, and they're actually right here in front of me. They're right here to my right. And I was even there when the line ended. And now, flash forward to the future. I used to watch a lot of the Spectre Creative channel. I don't really anymore. But at one time, he made a lot of videos surrounding DCUC. Why? Because he was actually the production manager on that line. So a lot of the decisions were his final decisions. He actually basically ran that line. So his videos can be rather informative. Now, I know this is going to hurt some people's feelings, but in one of the videos, he did end up saying that when we had Batman, Superman, like the heavy hitters, we were doing fine. But it is once we switched over to making a lot of B and C list characters, villains, females, obscure characters, the sales were just not there. We couldn't get enough revenue back from those figures to keep the line going. So they had to move it on to the Signature Series, which was like an online Matty Collector, project. But that also was really short lived. Reason being why collectors didn't make up enough of the market to keep the line going. Now, I know collectors have become a little bit more of who buys these figures, but when you're talking about a mass retail line that is actually sold in stores all over the world, in toy aisles, you do have to appeal to the masses. You can't just pigeonhole yourself into producing figures that are aimed solely at collectors. You have to have a wider vision. So basically, what he was trying to say was that once we got away from making Batman, that was the end of the DCUC line. But we can also look at some other examples. If you look at the DC Icons line, I think they probably made 3 Batman figures. And of course, their run was only about a year, where they did make, more than 30 figures, and actually is a really nice looking collection when you put it together. But the scale and the availability really killed it, so that was a short lived line. Then we had the DC Essentials line. And once again, I think they ended up making maybe 4 Batman, but they did get through a lot of the core characters, which a lot of people were happy about. But surprisingly, what ended up happening as well, they had, almost a 2-year run, more than 40 characters. But once again, the line crashed and burned. But then we get into a different example, and that is going to be DC Direct figures. Now, although they were always advertised as being 7 inches, I think they were more like 6.5, but I digest. But I'll tell you one thing about DC Direct, and that is that they made tons of Batman. They made all the versions of Batman you can think of, all the different storylines, a lot of alternate versions. They were also really Superman and Wonder Woman heavy, where these characters actually got tons of figures based on their different stories. And what this did is it actually allowed DC Direct to make other figures, obscure storylines, things that actual collectors would be the only people that would be interested in it. But you know what ended up happening? They had a really long run. I mean, years and years of making DC Direct figures, which eventually did come to an end, only to be resurrected by McFarlane. But what we are looking at is that they made tons of Batman. They made a lot of Batman, and that is what kept their line going over the years. Even if I know people don't want to hear this, I know that saying this rubs people the wrong way. It is a fact, but that is another story. And this is actually how you keep interest in your line. You don't release all your main characters or most asked about characters in one shot, because what that will actually do is leave you with a lot of newer designs, newer characters that people are not familiar with. So you always do want to keep some, you know, classic versions, sought after versions in your back pocket, and you kind of want to string it along to keep your line going throughout the years. One main character villain that I know people want, and even I have noticed this, is a comic Two-Face. You always see him pop up in the comments, but here's the thing, we will get a comic Two-Face. It's not like it's never going to happen. But if you want the line to be prosperous and in the end have a satisfying run, you must hold off on some of those characters and throw them in, just like we said, to keep the line exciting and keep interest in your line. You do not want to make the same mistake that other DC lines had, which was right away move away from your best selling characters and start releasing characters that a lot of people don't really know or are interested in. You want to pepper them in over time and always have that figure that people really want ready to release. And the sales will reflect this, as well will the longevity of your line. And as always, we also had some surprises. Now, these figures were not even in any of the reveal lists or any of the overseas documents, but they are a big surprise when they are revealed, and that was the 90s styled Hook Aquaman and also the Blue Energy Superman. And this is, of course, what I mean when people jump the gun. Right away, they were like, well, where's the red Superman? It's gonna come. Is it gonna be the platinum version? More than likely. But of course, that is a selling tactic that all toy companies use. No matter if you like it or it hurts your fifis, a lot of figure companies actually do follow the same selling tactics to get more sales. It's just a fact of life. I even heard somebody say that we got to battle these corrupt, companies, or you go ahead and do your battle while I'm going to be sitting back collecting my figures, enjoying life, and really getting a lot of fulfillment from my DC Multiverse line. Now, taking a look at the actual alternate version of Aquaman, this is what I'm talking about. You do know that with this one, with the digital version, we are going to have already 5 versions of Aquaman, alternate versions. Some versions you could use with Super Friends, some versions you could use with a classic look, some versions you could use with a more modern Justice League, and you even have a crazy alternate universe version. And this is what you want from your line. Because for me, I want all the versions. I want to build different shelves, different teams, and I want the line to continue to grow and advance, which means we will end up getting more vehicles, more females, more villains. Everything that we would want is going to come from a line that is actually doing well. Because honestly, I want this line to go on for years and years, no matter the fanboy tears. Now, we also had a first look at a different version of John Stewart, which I'm happy with. Why? I have a different version that's a more modern, new age version, and now I have a more classic looking John Stewart. And that is actually an advantage as a collector, and I just don't understand why people can't see that. Oh, but it doesn't match the JLA or whatever they're trying to sell. Who cares? Who cares? If you do not like the Batman that was revealed, that is for this wave, we have tons of Batman. You could make a different version and put it with on your shelf with your JLA that you imagine in your mind. I actually was gonna make all black Three Jokers Batman. I never ended up doing it. I still have the figure ready to customize, but now I don't have to do that. Now they're gonna release an all black Three Jokers. And while I'm not blown away or I think it's the best reveal I've ever seen, I accept it and I move on to the next reveal, which of course was Plastic Man. Now everybody wants this. Everybody said this looks great, except for the people that are not happy that it is the collective build figure, which means you have to buy the other ones. But oh well, it is part of collecting this line. Because now, 3 years into collecting this DC Multiverse line from McFarlane, I have come to realize something, and that is that this line is never going to be perfect. I mean, a lot of figure lines are not perfect. This line is going to release what it wants to release, no, regardless of how much we're not happy with it. This line is actually doing really well. You're seeing a lot of sales, a lot of sellouts, and you can actually see on the shelves which figures people want and which figures nobody is interested in, which is ideal for your line to keep going on and keep thriving. But, anyways, guys, those are my thoughts on that. You guys let me know what you think. But in the end, keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.